Alright.
How's everyone doing today?
Good.
It's really been a pleasure sharing ideas with everybody this semester. And when I was trying to research a topic for this speech, I went back to what we did the first speech, where we all got up here and we talked about our hopes and dreams. We talked about what we would do when we made it in life. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news today, but there's a very serious thing standing in between what we all believe is our hopes and dreams and where we stand right now. And this is it. This is the national debt, $13 trillion. It's $47,000 to everybody who sits in this room. You pay taxes, it's $100,000. Now this is a controversial issue, and I want to really take it as objectively as possible, so I have a lot of numbers. But what I want to get to is, A, the national debt is essentially caused by the trade deficit. Two, trying to eliminate this problem through taxation might not be the best idea. And third, most importantly, I don't want to enter into a realm of political rhetoric, because then people stop listening. And this is not a liberal conservative issue, this is a people issue. So first let's talk about debt. We all know how it works. You consume too much, produce too little. Made $100 today, I spent $1,000, tomorrow I'm in debt. Now what happens when 360 million Americans do it? It's trade deficit. We import, consume too much. We export, produce too little. Now we can do this because the government makes up the difference. Borrows money, uses tax revenue in order to allow this to happen. Now, if we assume that's true, that just in the same way that one person cannot consume more than they produce, then we can say that if we put the trade deficit against the national debt, we're going to see a proportional arrangement there. And when we pull it up on wolframalpha.com, we see that. This red line is the trade deficit increasing negatively, and as you can see, with kind of the same amount of slope, the national debt is increasing. Now, when I was looking into the economics of this, Peter Morosi, director of the U.S. International Trade Commission, said that if we could just bridge this gap by 50%, we would increase production by $400 billion. That's $2,700 for every worker in America. And that's what we did right here recently. And so when this increases, we would expect this line to decrease, but that didn't happen because this is artificial. This is spending. So when we look at it, the government stimulus that was trying to bridge that gap in trade deficit cost $860 billion, borrowed money, tax revenue. And it created and saved 3 million jobs, according to the White House. Now that looks good on the front page of a paper. However, when we apply basic arithmetic to it, that means that it costs the U.S. government $300,000 to create one job. Now when we balance this against the private sector, here we took Google, which was funded with $100,000, and within the first year it created 40 jobs. Apply the same mathematics, $2,500 per job. And of course, Google created wealth by making our lives easier to live. We don't have to sit through volumes of encyclopedias anymore. We just Google it. Now, these are big institutions that are hard to understand, so I want to bring it down to a personal level. I'm going to introduce you to a friend of mine. This is Mark Zuckerberg. He's not a close friend of mine, but in the world of social networking, he's a friend of mine. If you don't know, he is CEO of Facebook. Now, he's not very different than anybody else in this room. He's 26 years old. The only difference is in the first 4 years he was out of college, he created $3 billion in wealth. Created it. Now, in those 4 years, to do the tax structure, the government took $1 billion from him. Can you imagine, in the first 4 years you step out of college, the government takes 1/3 of everything you produce? And what did the government do with this? The $1 billion, when they applied it to jobs, created 333 jobs. Now, using the Google structure, and let's say he took this money and invested into internet startups, he could create over 400,000 jobs and some real wealth and make our lives easier to live. Now, here's the tricky part, is that I know people in this room are sitting here and they're saying, Dan, I've heard this before. I heard it from a guy who looks just like you. If I throw in a blue blazer with a red tie, it all makes sense. You're a Republican. And I assume that you're thinking that Because while I did this research and I pulled these numbers, I thought the same thing about myself. But I'm not. Obviously, the Republican Party hasn't fixed any of this. And that's why I'm saying that politicians want to use this to gain on each other, but that's not it. So when I researched what it meant to be a Republican, one name popped up. And this name is significant because as David Wells, a professor of sociology at Sonoma State, wrote in a paper, Gauging Conservatism, he said that this guy is the yardstick of the last 30 years. If you want to understand modern conservatism, Ronald Reagan. Now, when Reagan left office, he was asked how the government's view on the economy is. The government's view, not the Republican view, not the Democratic view, but as a two-party system, what his view on the economy was. And this is the quote that he said: "If it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. And when it stops moving, subsidize it." Now, it, in this quote, is the economy, but what is the economy? The economy is what we choose to produce as we go out and fulfill our hopes and dreams. And so I view this quote a little bit different. If the economy is our lives, this is the government's view on your life. When your life moves to fulfill your hopes and dreams, they're going to tax it. Now, under the burden of tax, if your life continues to move, they're going to regulate it. And if your life stops moving because you can no longer fulfill your hopes and dreams, the government says that's fine. Come in, fill out some forms, we'll give you what you need. This is debt, real time. This is not the America I was promised. I can be anything in the world. And this is a monetary description of irrational politics. Just because a politician says it can be done, it can't. We cannot tax our way to production. We cannot spend our way to wealth. And we cannot regulate our way to freedom. We are the only people who can take care of this number. But we have to do it by making sure that we intellectually arm ourselves against people who are spending our way into oblivion. Thank you very much.